SuperTalk Mississippi Media production.
Have you been seriously injured? Mama Justice is here for you. Our medical team partners with top-notch doctors, surgeons, therapists, and urologists, ensuring a comprehensive recovery journey. If you've been injured, call Mama Justice today. We're here for you.
This is Gerard Gibert, and thank you for listening to MidDays here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
MidDays with Gerard Gibert is on the air. MidDays with Gerard Gibert is powered by C-Spire. Power your home or business with C-Spire Fiber. To learn more, visit supertalk.fm/C-Spire. C-Spire Fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to MidDays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Everyone, and welcome to Midday SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm your host, Gerard Gibert, along with Will East, in for the vacationing rhino. We'll be guiding you through the middle of your day with facts, fodder, and fine music. It's a hot one out there, Will.
Quite warm.
And it is expected to be so for the duration of the week, I believe. We're under like a heat advisory.
And humid.
Yeah, it is. The humidity has certainly arrived.
I don't know about you, but it rained at my house yesterday afternoon for about 30 seconds.
Yeah.
It was a heavy rain for 30 seconds.
Yep.
And after that rain ended and the sun came out, I mean, it was you couldn't move outside because of the humidity. That's how thick it was.
Yeah. No doubt. But we should be accustomed to it. It's that way every year.
Yeah.
And we know that that signals the Neshoba County Fair is right around the corner, is what it means. Of course, tomorrow we're going to be down at the Mississippi Gulf Coast at the Mississippi Municipal League annual conference at the beautiful Coast Coliseum. So we're looking forward to that. We got the Ricky Matthews show as well. We'll be live from the Coliseum. I know lots of folks that work in the municipal realm, supervisors, of course, various city leaders, mayors, aldermen, council people. They're all going to be there. And it's always a good event. They do a great job. And, they learn from each other, which is what's truly important. I know one of our regular listeners, Larry from Mize. He's a member, I think he's an alderman. And he's down there. I've seen him posting photos on his social media. So, Larry, we'll be down there as well. You're probably in a conference right now, but we'll certainly be down there and look forward to seeing everybody, you and everybody else. So, should be a good one.
And there's a lot of new mayors.
Yeah, that's right. I've seen the lineup. I had a sneak peek at the lineup. We got a good one in store. So, we're going to have some fun with that. No doubt about it. If you want to know of some crazy stuff related to wasteful spending, and let me preface this by saying I got increasingly furious, mad, upset. I'm not sure. I try to not get that way. I don't let stuff rattle me too much. Try to stay relatively even-keeled. But this rather viral narrative coming from Democrat elected leaders, mainly in Congress, of course, and then surrogates and activists and spokespeople and just people who want to call attention to themselves about the big, beautiful bill and this notion that we had to give tax breaks to billionaires, therefore we had to cut food and health care. And there's just video after video and article after article And I've read so many and watched so many, and I sent you at least one we'll get to in a minute that we'll play for the folks. But, when I read this report I'm about to share with you, it does kind of slap that narrative in the face. And what I'm talking about here is the incredible amount of wasteful, stupid spending by our federal government under the Biden administration. And I just want to say, and I'm going to give you an example in a minute that really caught my attention, that, okay, Democrats, maybe if you didn't spend money stupidly like that, we wouldn't have to cut. And we're not even really cutting SNAP and Medicaid. We're just tightening the eligibility rules more than anything. That's what's going on. They grossly misrepresent that. But the example I was going to share, Pete Buttigieg's Transportation Department, you remember him, the Secretary of Transportation?
Yeah.
$80 billion in DEI grants during the Biden administration. How about this one? $1.2 million. Now, I know that's not a lot of money, but nonetheless, it's an example. And it's emblematic of the just ridiculous ways our federal government has spent money. $1.2 million to help upgrade swimming pools in war-torn and poverty-stricken countries. Swimming pools. Now, if you're war-torn and you're poverty-stricken, where on the list of priorities are swimming pools? This is true. So Senator Joni Ernst has done she from the great state of Iowa. She's been, I would say, the most active in the U.S. Senate, maybe in the entire Congress, of just exposing some of this nonsense. This just happened in the last 24 hours that she exposed this. And she's got a photo of the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad. So this was mainly on U.S. facilities and U.S. properties in these countries. U.S. Embassy in Baghdad spent six figures on upgrades to its swimming pool. And I'm looking at this thing thinking, why the heck does an embassy have a pool that's this magnanimous on its property? What has that got to do with diplomacy, for example? Hey, come over, let's go for a swim while we try to stop this war. I mean, is that what they're doing?
What does it have to do with the Department of Transportation? That's another question.
Well, that's a separate deal now. So I apologize for that if I confused and conflated that. Yeah, the Department of Transportation was Buttigieg, of course, and the entire Biden administration. Remember, I've talked about this 1,000 times because I remember it so vividly the day he took office and he signed all those executive executive orders, and included in every one of those was the priority of DEI and CRT and everything that and equity and all that stuff. Just all that woke stuff. And that was core, that was central to all of these executive orders. And one of those orders instructed all the agencies under the purview of the president, you will emphasize DEI in all of your policy making. That's how we got all this crazy stuff. And so Buttigieg, of course, Secretary of Transportation, he really took that to the limit, and he spent $80 billion on DEI grants. And these were grants to various entities that had a relationship, a connection to the Department of Transportation. $80 billion. This was an agenda. It's also been learned that he delayed spending money on upgrading our air transportation and traffic control systems. Something that's fairly important, and that no doubt that's gotten a lot of attention because of all the various accidents and mishaps. And as a result of that, of course, we've now learned that, wait, we're still using diskettes to run the air traffic control system and this 30-year-old technology that's never been upgraded. And we got a new Secretary of Transportation, Sean Duffy, who has been all over that. And the good news is the big, beautiful bill does have some funding. I would say that's a core function of government. It does have some funding to upgrade the air traffic control system. And what Buttigieg said, well, he said he delayed these upgrades and investment because, well, it would just allow you to fly more airplanes. Because remember, part of the climate change agenda is to take the airplanes out of the air. Is that not just the most asinine thing you've ever seen? Yeah. What he quote said, these control upgrades would just allow them to fly more planes. And so why would that be in their interest? That's what he said. Talking to industry executives. Why do you care about upgrading the air traffic control system so you can just fly more planes? And once again, they're anti-profit, they're anti-capitalist. And in his case, he prioritizes the DEI agenda over air safety, literally, in the direction of the money under his control. We're stepping aside for a break. It's a Monday. We got a short show, 2 hours. Ricky Matthews, Super Talk Outdoors at 12:05. But at 11:05, it's Chris Brown, Northern District Public Service Commissioner. This segment of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by Covington County Hospital in Collins, where your health matters.
Now back to Middays with Gerard here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Def Leppard. Gotta get the old blood flowing there, baby. We're back with you in the Element Wealth studio. So, these folks that are producing these videos, just blasting, smearing the big beautiful bill, and their main complaint is that this bill provides all these tax cuts to the billionaires, to the rich. Literally, it's transferring money from the lower income people in the country to the bank accounts of the billionaires, which is a completely false statement. But that's what they're saying. And I would play some of these that I watched over the weekend. I've been watching them regularly since they started appearing all over the place. And you know how the algorithm works. Once you view a couple, click on a couple, then you just get fed more. And that's fine, because I'm fascinated by what the other side thinks about this. But what I was going to say is, I'd play them, except the Democrat Party has apparently told everybody you got to start using profanity in all your language. And we can't play these things on the air. And I don't have time to sit here and find every word stated in the video that we can play and bleep it out. So I just kind of pass on what it is. But they're what's up with that? There are tons of them that all have language that would violate FCC rules and regulations, and therefore we can't play it. We can't share it. But we can certainly talk about the message. But again, this idea that it's one or the other. We can either have tax cuts for the billionaires or SNAP and Medicaid benefits. That's just not true. That's just totally false. What is true is that to pass legislation through the Senate with a simple majority. You've got to meet the standards of the reconciliation process. These have to be bills that deal with budgetary matters, and that's what the big, beautiful bill does. And it is true that you've got to be careful on the combination of tax policy and spending policy to make that fit within the rules. And that's what they're talking about. They won't tell you that little nuance I just explained. They're basically saying, they're presenting as if it's necessary to, like, make ends meet. We got to make revenues equal expenses. Hell, if that's the case, we wouldn't have $2 trillion deficit. So put that out of your mind. That's not what's going on here. What they're saying is, to meet the rules of the reconciliation process, to pass legislation with a simple majority, it absolutely is true. You got to tinker and adjust the revenue pieces of the bill, the provisions, and the spending provisions. And they can only deal with mandatory spending, such as SNAP and Medicaid. And that's what they're saying. So, unfortunately, the way the parliamentarian does the math, even though, for the most part, the tax environment that's in place today simply continues, it doesn't work that way because that was passed under reconciliation. They go back to what we had before reconciliation. In other words, the Obama-era tax structure. And so even though we're continuing the Trump tax cuts, they compare what revenue they estimate would be lost as a result of that to the pre-2017 tax cuts. Am I making sense there? So you got to go back to the Obama. So they're calling this new tax cuts. It's not. So all these people making all these videos, they're wrong. There's nothing new. The main thing that's new is an increase in the exemption for estate taxes to $15 million. Honestly, guys, billionaires don't care about $15 million. Now, there are a lot of small business people that do. A lot of small business people that work their whole dang lives and build an asset of some value, and they exit, and they monetize, and they cash out. And the next thing you know, without that exemption for estate taxes, once that gets passed on to their heirs, the government says, give me 40%. I'm serious. That's ridiculous. You work your whole life, you build an asset, create jobs and wealth, and contribute to society by busting your butt. And when you finally hit a little pay dirt, and that gets passed on to your heirs, the government comes calling with their hand out. So increasing that is a good thing. I was pleased to see that. But this notion that was this massive amount of money taken from those with SNAP benefits and Medicaid and transferred to billionaires. Other than that, the tax structure remains level. There's some business provisions that are restored to 2017 levels, but everything remains level. The capital gains tax is the same. So there's this narrative they're promoting that this is just this huge new range of tax cuts that we had to implement, that the Republicans implemented, and they did so by taking food and health care away. It's just a lie. But again, I say, well, you were okay with spending $80 billion on DEI in the form of grants from the Department of Transportation, which, by the way, that was over the Biden term, all 4 years. That's half a year's budget. That was 1/8. Think about that. 1/8 of the Department of Transportation's budget went to DEI grants. 1/8 over the 4-year period. Well, if it's such a big deal, why don't you think about maybe not spending money that way, which means we wouldn't have had to cut Medicaid and SNAP. But they don't think that way. In other words, we got to have it all. There's not a dollar they don't want to spend, and we're going to fund that by taxing the hell out of everybody that contributes. But they don't care because we still got $2 trillion deficits. So it's maddening. If we got time, I think let's key this thing up.
Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill could cause Mississippi hospitals to lose up to $1 billion over the next decade and cause tens of thousands of Mississippians to lose their health care coverage. Mississippi has roughly 667,000 residents relying on Medicaid for health care coverage. Over half of Mississippi's births are covered through Medicaid, and 14% of working adults without disabilities depend on it. Even with Mississippi's reliance on Medicaid, all but one of Mississippi's delegation voted for the bill, which will drastically change Medicaid requirements for everyone. The new bill now requires 19 to 64-year-old able-bodied adults to prove they are working, volunteering, or going to school 80 hours a month in order to qualify. There are exemptions if you're pregnant, mentally or physically unfit for employment, or have dependents under the age of 14. Also, loss of employment or failure to complete proper paperwork will result in individuals being kicked off of Medicaid. These stiffer policies could cause 160,000 people to become uninsured in combination with the expiration of Biden-era Medicaid policies. All of this could lead to less accessible health care for Mississippians, worsening chronic conditions like obesity and diabetes. Mississippi hospitals, especially in rural areas, are also at risk. Cuts to funding in the bill, changes to Mississippi's Rural Health Care Fund, and state-directed payments could reduce Medicaid reimbursement rates, straining rural hospitals. Other officials have voiced concerns that since hospitals are also major employers, that their closures could affect local economies. Head over to MississippiToday.org to see how.
So that's from the Mississippi Today, which, of course, is a media outlet in the state of Mississippi that leans left. That's pretty clear. Anybody that has consumed their content would know that. But I would say that and that was produced by one of their journalists there, as you could tell. There's a lot of fear-mongering in there, in that little short clip we just played. The issue to me is that, and I've said this many times, we're in the healthcare insurance business in government. It's unfortunate, but that's where we are. That this has become such a big issue, and it didn't just start with this bill. This has been going on. And the problem is we've built this giant leviathan of health insurance between Medicare and Medicaid and ACA subsidies. We got all this government-funded health care. In fact, someone in the industry, I think it was from the Mississippi Hospital Association, if I'm not mistaken, reported that about 70% of the reimbursement from insurers to our hospitals for health care is from some government program. It's Medicaid, it's Medicare, it's ACA subsidies, it's TRICARE. So we're in the health care business in government at all levels. If you think about state Medicaid, almost an $8 billion program. Our whole state general fund budget is $7 billion. So the healthcare operations in government are bigger than the whole general fund. We're stepping aside for a break in the Element Well studio.
I'm listening. You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert, here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
From Toto Ford. It's a good tune there. That would be Steve Lukather on lead vocals and lead guitar. there's some interviews with him out there that are fascinating when he talks about the formation of the band. And so when they made that, they're like all 23, 24 years old.
Yeah.
It's just amazing talent at that age, just beyond their years. We're back with you in the Element Well studio. Yeah, Landfill Management says Rand Paul has published a list of waste for years. I watch it, the Festivus, annual Festivus list. I've seen it, watched it. He did. I don't think he had this in there, though. I think this is all new discovery, the $80 billion of DEI grants and the money to upgrade the pools at the various U.S. facilities across the globe, embassies and so forth. But, yeah, I've seen it. But really just think about it because, again, if the Democrats would work together to eliminate some of this crazy, useless, wasteful spending, they never talk about that as a reason, as an offset to the reforms to the SNAP and Medicaid programs. Only the tax breaks for the billionaires. I don't personally believe there's any such thing as a tax break, just to let you know. That, to me, posits that all income emanates from government. Whatever you get to keep, it's because government's giving you a break. And if you ever ask them, well, how much should it be? They can't tell you. Well, how much taxes should they pay? The top 1% currently shoulder 46%. This is from IRS data, by the way, of the tax burden in the country. How much should they pay? They can't tell you. But again, when do we ever say no? When do we ever say, we don't have the money for that? We can't afford it. Never. In my view, I've never heard him say that. James in Hattiesburg says, so by not upgrading the system, it cost the people on that flight in D.C. their life in the name of global warming. I mean, you certainly can make a case for that, James, no doubt. It's not a secret that we have these ancient, aging IT systems and used by our traffic control system. And this technology is in desperate need of upgrading. It's not just the IT, but all the other connected ancillary technology that's used to manage the nation's air traffic. It's old, it's ancient, it's aging, it's in desperate need of modernization and upgrading. How is it that DOT and even MDOT have funds to hand out grants? I don't know that MDOT does, Bill. I've never heard of any grants, certainly no DEI grants coming out of the Mississippi Department of Transportation. No. Well, the same question, that's Derry from Tupelo, the same question could be asked of anything that comes out of the federal government. And I know a lot of people in Mississippi are celebrating that as part of this bill, there's a huge amount of money allocated to some specific defense projects. And so Ingalls Shipbuilding on our Gulf Coast is going to benefit from that. And there's some other defense contractors as well within our state that will benefit from that. And that's great. But I think we have to be objective and honest here. We don't have the money for that either. And here's what I mean by that. If you take Medicare and Social Security out of the equation of spending and revenue, just set those aside. I've done this exercise mathematically. And just look at all the other spending and all the other revenue. Income taxes, corporate and individual. Those are the individual by far is the biggest source of income to the federal government. So let's just take and you've got excise taxes, but take all that, just take Social Security and Medicare, that stuff you pay in your paycheck, out of the equation, and take the benefits paid by Social Security and Medicare out of the equation. You do the math there, and 46 cents of every dollar that comes from the federal government, that's for defense, that's for non-defense, the huge agency complex, interest on our debt. 46 cents of every dollar is borrowed. So the fact is, We don't have the money for any of this. If your definition is we don't have the money that you balance revenues with expenses, 46 cents of every dollar is borrowed. We got a long way to go. And while I'm pleased, like I think most listening are, that this $9.4 billion rescission package does certainly reduce some future spending commitments. That's the one that defunds NPR, PBS. You see, everybody's got a sacred cow, don't they? It's NPR, PBS. Oh, my gosh, people are going to die. It's SNAP and Medicaid. Oh, my gosh, people are going to die. There's a sacred cow. Everybody's got one. That's why we're $36 trillion in debt.
Yeah.
Because everybody's out to protect their sacred cow. And sometimes those sacred cows are the core function of government. I would argue that the ships we need to build at Ingalls are a core function of government. But that doesn't negate the fact that we're still borrowing money to do it. That's because our government has ventured into so many spending endeavors and programs that are not a core function of government. And we can't afford it. Now, the Democrat solution would be you just got to go get more taxes from all those people. There ain't enough to go around, as Maggie Thatcher famously said. Sooner or later, you run out of OPM, other people's money. We're there. But that never gets brought up. They never talk about, well, there's some other areas over here, and maybe the Republicans would have worked with them. Hey, let's cut some of this stuff over here and maybe adjust what you're doing to SNAP and Medicaid. Although I wouldn't support that, honestly. I think the reforms we did to SNAP and Medicaid are reasonable and appropriate. And what is now being said will be the main cause of people losing their Medicaid coverage or their SNAP benefits is having to verify their eligibility for those benefits twice a year, and also just adding a few more requirements to ensure when they document their eligibility that they're truly eligible. And now we're seeing all this fear-mongering that I get to it in the program from the Boston Globe. You know, I've shared before, that's my favorite left-leaning media source. Man, they had an article this morning that was like a book, and it was nothing but fear-mongering about the big, beautiful bill, if you will. And in particular, it had interviews with several Massachusetts residents. Massachusettonians? I'm not exactly sure what you refer to them as.
I've always had trouble with that word.
Massachusettonians? I may have said that wrong, but they go through like, and I predicted this. Not that this was hard to predict. You knew they were going to go dig up these hardship cases and bring these individuals forward. And they would talk about how this would affect them. But the first one in the article, Christopher Talbot, a full-time server at a pizzeria in Springfield, Massachusetts, uses his monthly SNAP benefits to buy nutritious food for his family. And I'm not trying to make light of it. Please understand. He and his wife and 2 young daughters rely on Medicaid for health care. And I hope I don't sound callous and crass and uncaring and uncompassionate. You're a pizzeria server. Why do you got 2 kids? Maybe you need to get your income a little bit more stable and a little bit higher. You know that the only reason you're doing that is because the government's going to pay for it. That's how we end up with $36 trillion in debt. I hate to be callous like that, and I think I get it. You need help. You don't make enough money to pay for health care and maybe food for your family in that particular job role. But is government the best way to address that? That's the question that nobody's asking. Should it be a government program? According to the Democrats, absolutely, 100%. There is no other way. Coming right back. Stay with us.
Hey, this is Bob.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Little Jackson Brown. I got that couple of Jackson Brown songs on my list of future songs the house band will learn. We don't have any in this set, but
this is my favorite one.
You like that one?
Yeah, I like that one.
Yeah,
I like Dr. My Eyes as well.
Yeah, that's the one I'm hoping we can add. So it's a little work involved in that, but I think we can handle it. So, on the C Spire text line, somebody said, I'm going to see Toto tonight in Birmingham.
Hey!
That's awesome. Not callous. For every pizza server, there's 100 more abusing the system. I'm sure the Globe doesn't mention them gaslighting as liberal media goes. Yeah, just talking about this article in the Boston Globe that is just got example. This is a very long piece. Normally you don't see that in the newspaper. It's more like a big expose. And they've got all kinds of people featured that are residents of Massachusetts. Here's one. Anytime any sort of social safety nets are defunded, it makes me mad. Especially when I know that the savings from those cuts are going to the super elite rich class. It's even more maddening. That's just wrong. That's not true. This is someone named Talbot. He's 41. His wife is a Navy veteran on disability. Let's see. Here's another one. He says, it goes on, Talbot says, I can't think about my daughter's college funds or savings for retirement because I'm so focused on day-to-day survival. He appreciates that the new law does away with taxes on tips and overtime, but questions if it was done, quote, just to say, so they could say they did something for the working class.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and tell you, this is a media tactic that been used time. You pick the person.
Yeah.
They're not going to pick somebody who's, been in and out of prison and, is on parole. They're not going to do that.
Yep.
They're going to pick the perfect individual, right? That's the story that you tell. It tugs at your heartstrings because you read this guy's story and you go, oh, yeah, if anybody deserves it, he does.
Yeah, exactly. And so just so you know, there's a photo of workers from the Service Employees International Union. That's the federal government union of Union of Federal Government Workers. There's a photo in this article of several of them, and they're protesting. Of course, they've got the obligatory protest signs. In this case, the sign that they're all holding is one cut in the shape of a grave headstone. And there's a cross on it, which I'm surprised they included, that symbol of Christianity, honestly. And then it says, big bold letters, R.I.P., sacrificed for the rich. Literally, that's the message, to your point, Will, that, yep, the rich are getting tax cuts and people are dying. Here's what they fail to tell you. What about all the money the rich are paying for everybody that gets these benefits? That doesn't enter the equation. No rich people, no benefits for anybody. Not just the few that are now going to be burdened with checking in twice a year to ensure they're truly eligible. What's the problem with that? So these were service employees, union workers that protested at the Capitol, outside the U.S. Capitol. There's just case after case that are referenced in this article. And there's also an article see if I can find that one, that where they went into Louisiana. And so Louisiana, believe it or not, because of the large number of people they have on Medicaid and also in the SNAP program, it's being reported, the combination of those two, that this will affect Louisiana from a federal funding perspective and a number of people affected with these benefits than any other state, which is interesting since the Speaker of the House is from Louisiana. And if Mississippi had expanded Medicaid, we would be close to the top, if not at the top of that list. Louisiana did. So you take the combination of Louisiana being a very poor state, just a notch ahead of Mississippi, but a state with a population that's, almost twice, I think, what Mississippi's is, maybe not quite. And the fact that they've leaned into both of these programs very hard, it is going to affect them.
You know who else is going to affect?
Who?
Illegal immigrants. In Illinois, adult illegal immigrants 42 to 64 without legal status will lose their health care coverage.
That's exactly right. And so...
Which we were told wasn't happening, but I guess, according to the Chicago Tribune, it is.
Yeah, there's nuance to that as well. That's not exactly right. We're coming right back after Fox News Super Talk News with Chris Brown. Hour of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by the Mississippi Business Journal. Visit msbusinessjournal.com. Scott Coopwood, publisher and president.
Welcome to the show that challenges you to think deeply, and look beyond political posturing. You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays. We're coming at you from the Element Wealth Studio, kicking off a brand new week here on Super Talk Mississippi. It's our pleasure to welcome now Chris Brown, the Public Service Commissioner for Mississippi's Northern District. Commissioner, thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Gerard. Appreciate you having me.
You bet. So the big, beautiful bill had a lot of stuff in it that affected lots of different areas. Did it affect and will it affect your purview there with respect to energy and regulation of utilities providing energy?
You know, it will. The biggest focus of the big, beautiful bill, as the president calls it, is trying to streamline the process and get rid of what he considers government waste.
Yeah.
So a lot of the green subsidies are subsidizing a form of energy generation that is not very efficient and doesn't survive in the free market. So he suspended, the House did away with the green subsidies.
Yep.
The Senate put it back in, and so he was able to get the House to support the Senate version because he promised to give an EO to instruct the Department of Treasury not to distribute the money to the Green New Deal projects.
Okay. But is this welcome news, though, Commissioner, to streamline some of the permitting process? So how does that work? Are there permits required at both the federal and the state level for some of these energy projects?
A lot of it's the Wild Wild West. So that there's a lot of, when you don't have true free market, you have distortions in the market that are generated by those subsidies, and so there's legitimate concerns about grid reliability.
Yeah.
Based on what is too much, because we have frequency in hertz, and solar doesn't generate any frequency.
Yeah.
But you have to have frequency to run your appliances and electrical devices, and we saw Portugal. They had too much solar online, and their system crashed. And so now they're trying to discover, okay, what's too much? So there's some grid reliability and resiliency issues that are yet to be determined by a lot of this green energy.
Okay. Well, as you know, the president is well aware that we've got this explosion of artificial intelligence, which necessitates the building out of data centers, which consume lots of power, lots of electricity specifically. And he was at a summit, you're probably aware, a couple of weeks ago with Senator Dave McCormick in Pennsylvania, and he talked about the need to expand and bolster our energy footprint so we can accommodate all this investment. And Mississippi, of course, is no stranger to that as well. But he's pretty focused on really getting industry to make these investments. Are you seeing activities in the Northern District towards that?
In the Northern District, we do have the biggest news is it's quasi-government, the TVA, Tennessee Valley Authority. The way to the future is nuclear.
Yep.
Because it's clean, it's reliable, it's 90% on, compared to wind. Wind is less than 40%, and solar is less than 30%. Natural gas runs about 60% on. And then, in comparison, nuclear is 90% efficient.
Okay.
So they commissioned their first SMR, which is small modular reactor, in the Clinch River project. It's in Tennessee, but they're testing concept with the 300 megawatt GE BWRX 300, which is going to produce 300 megawatts. They commissioned it last year, scheduled to be built out in 2 years. Once they have that design and it's up and going, they'll replicate that around the valley.
Okay.
So that's
good. That's good news.
Yes, sir. It's very good news. We're behind the Chinese and the Russians on SMR design and deployment, but we're catching up fast with this project. So the biggest cost is the first one, right? So TVA is kind of taking it on the chin to get the first one developed. And then companies like Entergy, Mississippi Power, and others can contract with GE to build the same thing in their locations.
Right.
So it should be a game changer for power in the United States.
Well, the president made it clear and delivered a strong message. He said, we're leading China, our most ardent foe, arguably, in artificial intelligence and data center construction. But we're lagging with respect to increasing our energy output. And he made that a central part of his message a couple of weeks ago. So it's good that the White House and the Trump administration recognizes this need. Are you hearing, or are you interacting, Commissioner, with your counterparts in other parts of the country? What are they saying or hearing?
We are. I'm actually was recently elected president of CRUC, which is just think of the SEC version of state regulators.
Okay.
So we just came back from a conference in Texas with them. We have another meeting next week with the national version of the national group of regulators that we'll discuss these issues. But everybody's excited about, number one, that we were able to change the administration. We were headed down a dark path, and literally and figuratively, with the Biden administration. We can look towards Germany to see what we didn't want to do, but the Biden administration was running headlong into it. Germany, first quarter of last year, was bragging that they had 50% of their energy was generated by renewables, which I'm not against renewables, but they had the second highest cost per kilowatt hour of energy in the world, so they started losing their industrial base. So that's a path we do not want to follow.
Sure.
President Trump saved us from that.
So are you familiar, Commissioner, with this big project in West Texas that Rick Perry and his son are behind? It's amazing. Are you familiar with that, this big one?
I'm not. Which one?
So he announced a couple of weeks ago, actually a little less than a month ago, that they're going to build the world's largest data energy complex. That's how they describe it, with the full matrix of energy sources, nuclear, gas, solar, etc., to produce 11 gigawatts, with 1 gigawatt coming online late 26. That's a bunch.
That is a lofty goal.
I think it's 5,200 acres designated out in West Texas for that purpose. And $30 billion, I think, something like that, just initial cost, and it'll expand way beyond that. I just wonder if maybe this is a blueprint for the future to kind of have these combination energy sites for the combination of energy and data centers. And, of course, the other thing you're talking about with SMRs, which may be provided by the grid, is lots of energy generated and consumed outside of the grid on the other side.
Yes, I think it's all the above. As far as energy production, the Mississippi Public Service Commission, the three of us, we're committed to all the above approach with the focus on affordability and reliability. So you don't want to disrupt the grid. You want to make sure when you flip the lights on that the lights actually come on and you have heat in the winter and air conditioner in the summer. So those things are very, very important, and we weigh it all through cost, so that there's a way to generate clean, responsible energy with the consumer in mind, and that's our focus, to make sure that every dollar you save on utilities is an extra dollar you have to spend in the economy, and it increases the quality of life for all Mississippians if we get that mix right.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's what I was going to say, is that folks are concerned about possible increase in costs with there being more demand that we're looking at putting on the grid. But it sure seems like that the energy producers, the electricity producers, are meeting the challenge, are responding.
So far, I will say the interesting part, you mentioned some of the synergies that we're starting to see. These companies like Meta and Google and others that are heavy energy consumers, AWS here in Mississippi, they are starting to look at investing in power generation themselves.
Yeah.
So to make sure we guard the ratepayer from subsidizing these big projects. And I know that my colleagues and I on the Mississippi Public Service Commission, we're keeping an eye on the AWS project. And,
sure.
And Amazon's a great partner, but we want to make sure that the cost of the power generation supplied to AWS is not transferred to the ratepayers.
Right.
We want to make sure that what was promised, and I think what is going to be delivered, just trust but verify is where we're at, but
sure.
that AWS will come and they'll consume enough energy to offset the cost to the ratepayer, to the homeowner, and keep those rates lower.
Yeah.
So it's an economies of scale thing.
Yep, sounds good. Chris Brown, Northern District Public Service Commissioner. Thanks for joining us, Commissioner. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Gerard. Good to see you.
Yep, we're coming right back. Stay with us.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Let's do this.
On SuperTalk Mississippi.
Let's go.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. More Toto there from Will. That from the Toto 4 album. I misspoke a minute ago. The Hold the Line came out before Toto 4.
Yeah, that was one of the early ones,
yeah,
right?
From the 78 eponymous album.
This one from 1978 on your dial.
That's right. But Africa, maybe the group's most famous song. My favorite is I'll Be Over You. The video is really cool. Shot in
I'll look that one up.
Downtown L.A. They're on a rooftop. It starts raining when they're recording it. And they rush inside. They look it up while they're singing, performing. I don't know if it was staged that way or not. I've never read the history of it, but it's unusual for it to just break into a little rainstorm in L.A. And the drummer, who's unbelievable drummer, Jeff Porcaro. He picks up one of his symbols and uses that as an umbrella as they're going.
Jeff Porcaro died in a bizarre gardening accident.
Did, man. He was
just like the Spinal Tap drummers.
Yeah, yes, exactly right. He was some kind of good drummer, though.
And I think his brother, 2 or 3 of his brothers, right?
2 of them, the bassist as well, and then background vocals and keyboards, I think. His other brother, I can't remember, but they're a very talented family, obviously. Incredible. So back with you in the Element Well studio. I'm betting that, and I didn't mean to trip up the commissioner. He knows that, asking him the question. And it's fairly recent news about this big project in Texas, but I bet he's looking it up. It's 5,200 acres, 11 gigawatts. Just for perspective, folks, Entergy's output in the state of Mississippi is presently 3 gigawatts. That's for Entergy. Of course, we have TVA and Mississippi Power. I don't know what their total output is. It's probably in line with that, though. But think about one site that generates more power than the entire state of Mississippi's utility complex does. Electrical providers, that is, electricity providers. It's incredible. And it, again, purpose-built to host data centers. So combination of an energy project and a site that is suited for data centers there in West Texas. Former governor of the state, Rick Perry, involved in that. Remember, he was the Secretary of Energy for a bit under the first Trump administration. So we appreciate the commissioner for coming on. On the C Spire text line, I was talking about the person featured in the Boston Globe article that says he's a pizzeria and he's worried about how he's going to make ends meet, and I really don't see why he's going to lose a SNAP in Medicaid at this point. I mean, just do the paperwork, dude. You're working. You meet the work requirement. You meet the income eligibility. So just make sure you get the paperwork done. That's it. That's all you got to do. It's not that big a deal. So again, a lot of fear-mongering about that, unnecessarily, unfounded. What should have been asked of the pizzeria guy is, 1, okay, what does your wife do for a living, or nothing? Then 2, what is your second job? Yeah, and I just pointed out that as a server in a pizzeria, you're probably not making a whole lot of money, but you got a wife and kids, 2 kids, and, I'm certainly not of the view that we should tell people about their family plans. But on the other hand, when the taxpayers are paying for it, you see the conundrum that raises there? Mm-hmm. It's just a problem. And they do point out, I knew this was coming. I never said this on the air, but I was waiting for this to happen. So they pointed out, and I've checked out several of the other large blue cities in blue states in the country are reporting this as well. And it's this, that there are lots of private companies whose employees are on Medicaid. So they're pointing out that, if you paid your people enough money or you paid it in full, their health benefits, then they wouldn't be at risk of losing their Medicaid. Well, I would argue they're not at risk of it as it is, but their contention is that the federal government's subsidizing their workforce. You see, because that position asserts that it's an employer's responsibility to provide health care coverage for their employees. As you know, it's expensive. And often you're faced with a choice. Do I pay them just compensation and wages, or do I cover health care? And if you got more than 50% or 50 employees, you've got to provide what's called minimum essential affordable coverage. And if you don't, you pay a penalty, and that's calculated based on a percentage of the income the employee earns. And if their cost of coverage, assuming the employer is paying some part of that, if their cost exceeds that threshold, then you're violating the 2010 ACA law, and that you're not providing the affordable coverage it requires as a, quote, large employer. And they would have the option of going to purchase coverage in the exchanges. And if you go sign up for that, if you're eligible for Medicaid, they direct you to Medicaid. That means your income's below 138% of the federal poverty level. So they're pointing out that Amazon and Walmart and one of the largest employers in Massachusetts, based there, you know who it is? Dunkin' Donuts. And they go through some research to determine how many people Dunkin' Donuts and all these other companies have on Medicaid. And, of course, that's because they don't think about the market realities. I mean, if you paid people and fully covered their health benefits and you paid people that are doing certain jobs a whole lot more money, well, then all of a sudden donuts are not affordable. Then nobody has a job. That never enters into the equation. What they really want is every company in America just to exist for charity. Just don't make a profit. Just you got to just pay all the profits out to the people that work for you, and you got to keep the costs down enough to just cover that, just break even and don't make a profit. I mean, I literally do believe that many feel that way. And, of course, there was an article in one of the big Nevada paper about Amazon having 18,000 employees in their Medicaid program. Now, they're a state that expanded Medicaid, so it would be able-bodied working adults, what we don't have in Mississippi. It's true. They have 18,000. So that means they have 18,000 people who are working at Amazon. I don't know if they're full-time or part-time. It doesn't say. They didn't share that detail. But their income...
But they're meeting the requirements.
Yeah, they're working to meet the work requirement that's now a requirement as of the big, beautiful bill. And they also, their income is below 138% of the federal poverty level. And that, of course, varies depending on the number of people you have in your household. For an individual, that's about $21,000. And then it kind of scales from that, one person in the household. So it increases to, I think, like $29,000 for two, and it keeps going up. I think around $40,000 for a family of four. So, and I admit, health care is expensive. I mean, if you looked at a family of four health care, that's about $18,000, $20,000 probably in Nevada. It's not far from that in Mississippi, and we have relatively low coverage. So, yeah, when you think about spending half your income on health insurance, now, Amazon has very generous benefits. I've actually researched that and heard them talk about it in Madison County with the projects going. They actually have very generous benefits. I don't remember exactly what they cover from a health care insurance perspective, but the employees' share of that is fairly reasonable. But, of course, if you're doing one of the jobs, it's not highly compensated. It's still expensive. I get it. So, and they're not complaining is that they're not making the point, this Nevada newspaper, that these people are going to lose their coverage. They're trying to make this point that the federal government is subsidizing Amazon, essentially, because their people are going to Medicaid to get their health coverage. That they're twisting and turning that and connecting all the dots and saying that's a federal subsidy. But that, again, presumes that you're just obligated as a private business to provide health insurance. I know the law says that, but from a practical perspective and even a market perspective, should that be the case? That I don't know. That's why it's expensive, honestly. We're coming right back in the Element Well studio.
I'm listening. Bring it on. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
It is on
SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. Give them a call at 601-957-6006 or go to Element Wealth, myelementwealth.com, and learn how they can help you strike a balance between income growth and guarantees. And the markets are doing well today. The Dow up 237. The NASDAQ also in the green. All the indexes are. The funny money up a little bit as well. So, I don't know. The markets seem to like what they're seeing. And I think they're feeling good about the fact that the tax environment is now stabilized, and we know what to expect. We have clear vision into the future. It's just big. And businesses, of course, are taking advantage of, will be taking advantage of the provision that allows immediate expensing of investments in equipment, machinery, and all those items that qualify for immediate expensing under the law. This is a much bigger deal, in my view, than any other aspect of the law with respect to tax policy and boosting economic growth. On the C Spire text line, it'll be interesting to see if the Medicaid message Dems are using will be effective, says Ben from Madison. I know Speaker Johnson warned members that too much reform to Medicaid could hurt Republicans in the midterms. Yeah, and I think what we can expect, Will, as you were talking about, is the deafness at which the left-wing media exposes this stuff, and they go dig out and dig up all these hardship cases and just promote them to the hilt. And you're right, it tends to stoke the emotions and really get people thinking. This idea, though, that there's money being transferred from these people to the wealthy is ridiculous and ludicrous and just simply not true. Again, we have $2 trillion deficits, and we've been churning out deficits for a long time. We've been investing and pumping money into these programs that we just keep adding to the debt. That's how we got $36 trillion of it, approaching $37 trillion right now. The class warfare rhetoric in the country, in my view, is just really off the charts. And this one that I would like to play for you but can't because of the profanity. Unfortunately, this is someone, after watching one, I'm like getting all of them now, but she goes into all this math of, the billionaires have all this money, and if they just lost 99% of their net worth, they still have more money than... she goes into all these explanations, and it's like, hey, lady, without what these people created, you couldn't make that video. I don't think she's ever thought through that. And I'm not talking about just the social media platforms. And I've explained this a million times, but it's worth pointing out again because this fool doesn't understand it. Well, there's a bunch of technology, as you know, behind the scenes that makes that simple video that we all now walk around with a video maker in our hand that you can go record a video with and stick it up there on the internet for the whole world to see, and it costs you nothing. That's all made possible by a whole bunch of people behind the scenes, many of whom got wealthy because they created stuff that everybody uses. That's why they got wealthy. And her video is, ain't you mad? You should be. And it's, again, making this case for about 5 minutes in here that our government's giving all this money and they're prioritizing tax cuts for the obscenely wealthy. Their wealth is now self-sustaining, and our elected leaders are still prioritizing, helping them make their wealth grow even more. Oh, my gosh. And again, just not considering that it's all the stuff these people created that you're talking about that makes it possible for you to push your incendiary rhetoric. And sometimes I just want to say, hey, if you don't like the fact that they're rich, unplug. Because every video you publish, you know how the system works. You're enriching them. Your content.
You're creating content. That's all it is.
That's what enriches them.
The reason why they make it so simple for everyone to do is so that everyone will do it, and therefore they get more content out of it, which costs them very little. Or maybe not zero, but very little.
Well, that's right. And just as I pointed out before, when Mark Zuckerberg had to go to the Hill and he was asked a question by a senator, how do you make money? He said, well, Senator, we sell ads. We're in the advertising business. And the more people that are on these platforms, the more the advertisers spend. And if it didn't work, they wouldn't advertise.
Let me give you a hint, Gerard. They penalize you if you put an external link in your post. So if you do a post, Facebook post, and you put a link to your website in the post, saying, hey, for more information, go to xyz.com. They penalize you for that. You know why? Because you're leaving their website.
I see.
You're leaving their app. They don't want you to leave. They want to keep you in their walled garden, as they call it.
I got you. Well, I'm disturbed by the class warfare and by the deep disdain and contempt so many people have for wealthy people. Especially those that simply don't understand that wealthy people contributed to society, produced value for society in such an enormous way that it enriched them. That's capitalism, man.
Honestly, I think, Gerard, that a lot of people see the end result, and a lot of people that they see, especially online, are people that maybe didn't have to work as hard. They got it somehow through whatever means, but they don't see. They see, a 20-something-year-old who has all the money in the world and a huge house and a Bentley out in the garage and all that kind of stuff, and that's what they see. They don't see the person who's 65 years old, who's finally able to retire, who built something. They don't see all that, 50-plus years of working their butt off. They don't see that because they're watching a short 15-second clip of somebody who's gotten very wealthy because of whatever reason. They don't see the hard work that went behind it, and I think that and they don't have that. They see others that do have, and they're without, and therefore they become envious. I think envy is a huge driver in that.
No, resentment, envy, jealousy. And I think what's different, like everything else in our world, is that everything's exposed because we all have these tools to see everything about everybody across the planet. And it's exposed now. And so it's like they're obsessed with it because they see it all the time.
And the culture, too. You listen to modern music. A lot of modern music, it's praising being rich. It's, I got all this money, and here's what I'm doing with it. I got, money coming out my ears. They're not singing about being poor.
Yeah. I get it. And I think the fallacy about this equivalence of working hard to the income you achieve from that, you gain from that, is that you achieve wealth and you're compensated based on your utility in the market. And the market doesn't reward hard work. It rewards value.
Yeah.
But you usually got to work hard to produce something of value.
But not all the time. And I think that's when they see especially like athletes, for example, they see an athlete who's 25 years old, has all the money in the world. You become envious of it.
Yeah.
You're like, gosh, I'm working my tail off here. I'm certainly working harder than they are, and they got all this stuff, and I don't have anything.
Well, take that up with God, because He endowed them with certain capabilities and talents that you may not have, and that's resulted.
They're seeing the 1% of the 1%. I think
I think that's right. Well, I just want to make the point, though, that all this belly aching, all this squawking that we're getting at all these people, that we had to do this to preserve these tax cuts for the wealthy, they never talk about all this frivolous, wasteful, abusive, fraudulent spending, such as $80 billion of grants for DEI programs from the United States Department of Transportation. Over 4 years, $80 billion. They never really talk about that. And there are numerous other cases. It's just a complicated question of, what is the government obligated to do? And these people think the government is just a big vending machine of all these various programs and benefits that goes out one side and the inputs come from the other. It's just class warfare. Final segment on the other side of the break.
Polyupa, Mississippi. Are we going to do this? Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Keep rolling. 3, 2, 1.
On SuperTalk Mississippi.
Speaking of the Boston Globe, we don't have time for it today. We'll get to it later in the week. Representative Catherine Clark, who is the minority whip in the House, she went to the well to, do her little rant, her little soliloquy. And so she uses some math. And she says, you know what it costs to keep a kid on Medicaid? $10 a day. How about a child fed with SNAP benefits? $6 a day. But the Republicans, they're prioritizing tax cuts for the billionaires. $6 million per billionaire. So, again, we've gotten to this point in this country, at least from the perspective of the left, that it's one group's responsibility to pay for, really with compulsion. Like, you don't pay your taxes, you go to jail. You're subject to prosecution. But you're like obligated to pay for the health care and the food for another group of people in the country. That's where we are. And they don't have any shame about that. And so, where would they stop, though? If you think about it, they won't. That's just it. Okay, well, we've taken that, and we've got enough to cover whatever it is they want to cover, and then they just keep moving on and on and on to the point where we're just all clad in blue pajamas, right? And walking around with a sickle and hammer flag. I mean, where does it stop? And they never really talk about or recognize the people they're talking about, the so-called billionaires, the amount, again, of enormous value they created for society. Let's take the Walton family. You may not like the Waltons, the founders of Walmart. What do they got, like 1.5 million employees? Are we all not better off for them really just permeating this model of low-cost buying so they can pass the cost on, volume buying to us consumers? If that weren't the case, why are the stores always full of people? They must be doing something right. And then how many people in communities are they hiring? And I know there are folks out there saying, well, but they killed all the mom and pops. Well, okay, but that's a matter of the market. The market, Walmart didn't, the market did. The market could have kept going to the mom and pops, but they didn't. They said, you know what, it's cheaper at Walmart. And there's more of what I want to buy, various reasons. But there are a lot of people that would say, you know, it's the hassle to go to Walmart. I'd rather just drive up to a merchant that sells what they do and make my consumption purchases there. I'm not trying to dig into that model. All I'm trying to point out is all of these corporations that hire all these people and provide enormous investments to communities and charities and pay a massive amount of taxes. It ain't ever enough, man. That's what bothers me. Let's see.
It's never going to be enough.
It's never enough. I think Walmart's net income was $19 billion in 24. That's exactly right. On sales of $650 billion. They're not that profitable as a percentage of profit. Just for perspective, Will, I've used this in my speeches. NVIDIA last year, $89 billion of profit. NVIDIA, sales of $120. Walmart, $650 top line, $19 bottom. In other words, it's a 2.5% net profit business.
That ain't much.
And that's not very good. You got to be pretty good at what you do. Kroger's, by the way, is 3%. That's a 3% net profit business. You would expect that. I mean, some low margin business. But they focus on that $19 billion. $19 billion, yeah, I agree, that's a lot of money. But how come people aren't complaining about NVIDIA, the price of graphics processing units? Well, it's what they sell. I mean, I've never seen a company. I don't know of a company in the history of the world whose net income exceeds their expenses. When I present this to accountants, because I have their exact financial statements, I'm not making this up. The accountants shake their head like, what? They're not aware of that. Most people aren't. And that, I think, is fantastic. Now, we're all sitting around here saying, well, I don't know how. I don't use NVIDIA. Yeah, you do. Every time you're on your phone and your computer, your data is being processed somewhere in the cloud of the Internet by NVIDIA technology. It's hard to really explain that and make that point because it's transparent and you're not directly involved in buying the technology, but you're consuming services from companies who are. And they want you to do that. That's how they make their money. But we could dive into that. We got to stop this I hate all corporations and I hate profit. And by the way, everybody's obligated to pay for everybody else. That's just wrong. We're out of here today on the Gulf Coast, tomorrow for the Mississippi Municipal League Conference. Until then, stay safe and God bless everyone.
A SuperTalk Mississippi Media production.